Hi, and welcome back to Women Making Magic. My name is Natalie Taggart, and I'm here today with my dear friend, Alicia Robinson, who's such an amazing person. Alicia works at the intersection of social justice and education. She's passionate about connecting people with opportunities to create equitable education for every student, promoting empathy across difference, and empowering social justice warriors to succeed, which is amazing in this day and age. I take my hat off to you, Alicia.
Thank you. I'm so excited to get to talk with you today.
I'm so happy you're here. So I'll just jump in with the first question. What do you stand for in your life and business, and how did you discover that?
So interesting that you asked that. I think the kind of intro you just gave describes that a lot for me, but I wouldn't say that I have always known that. I think I got into education about 16 or 17 years ago and just wanted to make sure that like all kids had a great education. And so my journey involved being a teacher and then moving out of the classroom and doing some work on the outside of supporting education. And then about 4 years ago, going off on my own and doing consulting work that has also turned into coaching and a lot of empowerment work with as you just stated, social justice warriors, people who are really invested in making a difference and yeah, in some ways being disruptive, in being disruptors,
Yeah,
wanting to kind of change the status quo for the better in our country. And so I feel like that's what I stand for in my own life, but I also feel like it's what I want to and kind of maybe have been called to help others do is think through how they do that professionally, personally, just kind of holistically
yeah,
in their lives.
totally. I love
Yeah,
that. And I think it's such an important conversation to be having, especially in today's, political and cultural climate. Like, we're
yeah,
really seeing that it takes all of us and we all have to be activists really in our own way.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's like something all of us can do at all times. And, I think particularly since the election, there's been a lot of talk of what you should do or kind of making people feel as though there's something that they should be grasping onto if they believe in certain things. But I think the truth of the matter is that it kind of differs for everyone. I was in a conversation with someone the other day who was saying that, protests, for example, have been the thing du jour,
Yeah.
but not everybody's a protester, not everyone's a marcher. But that doesn't mean that you can't get involved and that you can't make a difference. Um, so I think I really love the idea of helping people understand the different options and ideas to advocate for the things they believe in, and at the end of the day, really just standing up for what you believe in, not just sitting down with it, not just being kind of behind the computer thinking about it, but doing something in some way to
Totally.
support.
Yeah, absolutely. What's that word that's coming to mind? Clicktivism, where it's like
Ah,
you can
yeah,
like a post or share a link, but to actually like go out and vote or really make a difference in a tangible way is a whole other thing entirely.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think even a big thing for me too is just I feel like you and I talked about this recently too. This like idea of proximity.
Yeah.
Um, that Brian Stevenson talks about a lot in his book, but this idea of just getting to know people who are different from yourself, I think that is a form of activism.
Yeah.
Getting outside of your comfort zone, and so that might not be a direct like I vote, my vote counts in the X way or something like that, but it is a way of kind of building that empathy muscle
Mm-hmm.
to be able to be, uh, I think, helping you be just a better member of society.
Totally, totally. So you've had such an interesting evolution. Like, I've watched you grow and mature over the past couple years. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that journey has been like for you?
Yeah, it's evolving. I mean,
Always,
I could
ever,
use
yeah.
evolution. When I decided about almost exactly 4 years ago to leave my traditional job,
Yeah.
I went on a traditional job search, looking for job opportunities on job boards and applying and talking to my network and all that good stuff. And had, honestly, through the help of some coaches and friends and lots of books and so forth, came to the conclusion that I really could do whatever I wanted. And what's been really interesting in this evolution, yeah, right? You really can do whatever you want. And I went to one of those pottery places and painted it on a piece of pottery to remind me.
I love that, really.
Yeah. Cool. So I still look at that when I'm like, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. It's like, you really can do whatever it is that you want, regardless of what other people think or say. And that has been certainly empowering for me in my thinking, but it also has drastically changed, it feels like, in 4 years. I think I initially started to think around like what impact I could have based on the skill set that I developed over the few years before that, particularly in education. And for me, that was around talent management, working with schools and education organizations on recruitment retention strategies for the people in the organizations. But I realized after a few years of doing that wasn't enough. That for me, that was still, as somebody who's invested in education equity as a social justice imperative, that wasn't really enough to kind of make the impact I wanted to have. And honestly, I can go through kind of all the details over the past 4 years, but I think what's interesting is that just even in the last couple of days, I was thinking about Danielle Laporte and her core desired feelings concept. I've developed my core desired feelings and have been thinking about them for the last 3 years, or 2 years, I guess, or so. Yeah. But recently realized one of my core desired feelings is to be disruptive. That I don't want to be just maintaining the status quo. Yeah. So I need to be doing work that allows me to create a disruption to the patterns that we've been seeing in the world. And I think for me, again, that evolution, what has added to that is thinking about education equity, thinking about equity in general for all people, but realizing that a lot of that is just really rooted in our belief patterns, the ways we were raised, or just almost even not being honest in some cases about the reality of what our world is like. And as someone who really enjoys history anyway, that has meant really kind of exploring and understanding more about how, in particular, how race has impacted where we are as a country and where we are as a world right now. And just getting honest about that for myself and pushing myself to be honest about that with other people too. And that is a disruptive thing to do, as I've realized, and It's been a joy and it's been frustrating at times. Because it is uncomfortable. It's not something that I want to do necessarily.
Sure.
And it's not a conversation everybody's dying to have. But there are actual facts that have created systems of race in this world that have then impacted things that have created systems of oppression. And issues then that, for example, for me in particular, I think about impact the way our education system is set up and what's not working with it. So again, I just find so many opportunities to get real about that issue, and how getting real about it really actually is very healing for me and for others that embark in that quest for healing and reality.
Yeah. Oh my God, 100%. There were so many nuggets in what you just said that I want to dive into, but I've said this to you, this is one of the reasons I'm so grateful for your friendship, is I feel we've had very similar awakenings, if you want to call it that, of like you with you, the racial experience, and me with the feminist experience, and creating that, like I hear a lot about intersectionalism and how if it's not all inclusive. And so I think it's so important. It's such an important conversation to be having. And it's so uncomfortable to really look at yourself and get real, what you're saying about your experience, and then be like, okay, well, how does this translate into the world, and how am I going to use my voice to be disruptive?
Right.
Yeah. So
but again, it's also so empowering too to kind of realize that that's an option.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, to kind of embark on that journey.
Yeah.
Too.
Right. And be like, oh, I actually have a choice that I can speak about this, even if my voice shakes or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I love this word disruptive. What does that mean to you? Like, what does it mean to be disruptive?
I think, to be honest, I shied away from it for a while because it sounds so, problematic or, as though you're trying to create a problem. And I tend to be a compromiser and a person who wants to be positive and think positively and act positively. Yeah. But I actually think what it really means to me is not a negative thing. It's, again, getting back to that idea of being real and realistic and transparent and doing what, again, might not fit in with the status quo, but is actually going to really create change. So, I think we hear all the time that saying of whatever it is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. I think being disruptive is getting outside of the insanity, right? It's getting to a more sane way of doing something differently and getting a different result if that's what we really crave and what we really want.
Oh my God, so powerful. And there's something so powerful, right, about like getting outside of that box and like, okay, well, what am I trying to create anyway? Is there a different way I can go about that?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So cool. So we talk a lot about fear and self-doubt on the show and kind of how to work with that to make your magic. And this is a topic around which a lot of fear can come up. So and just like you were saying, not wanting to rock the boat or whatever. So I'm so curious what your experience has been with that and how you've worked with it.
Yeah, I would love to say that maybe I would be your first guest that's never had any self-doubt and didn't have that to overcome. But I think it's been a part of my entire life as I look back on it in certain ways. And despite what I've already said today, it's like still something that I feel like I'm always overcoming in some ways. Questioning that imposter syndrome piece, questioning whether I am being my authentic self, but if I'm allowed to be my authentic self. I don't know if it's getting a chance to be working for myself as a solopreneur, kind of being by myself more, or just other things that I've gotten to take on since I started working on my own that have helped me a lot in this overcoming self-doubt. Because I've just faced it head on, realizing, I'm not sure if I can do this, or I'm not sure if I'm the right one to do this, and kind of owning that and dealing with it when it hits. Kind of leaning into the feelings that are coming up for me when I feel those thoughts, and then like going to my support system to help remind me. I mean, sometimes it's just helpful to get some positive feedback and, a little like, you go girl from some friends or things like that. But also just getting to, I'm a person who kind of enjoys having some data or having some research to look into to understand what I'm thinking about. And when I kind of do some journaling on the data I have that tells me that this is a risk that is might feel uncomfortable, but is still like one that if I didn't take, I would feel regret for not having taken, then the self-doubt goes away a bit more. And so again, and I look back at that piece of pottery I have where I remind myself that I really can do whatever I want. And I think, wow, what does that really mean to me? That like I can act, the world is my oasis and I can choose whatever I want. And worst case scenario, it doesn't work out, but I have learned something from it. I wouldn't have known that it wouldn't work out if I didn't try it.
Exactly.
So yeah, just going in and jumping in and taking the risk is now becoming kind of fun for me in the last few years. It's like, well, okay, cool. Here's another risk. My back is getting tight because of this, but why not? Let's try it and see what happens. And luckily, I think a lot of those risks have paid off. Again, at minimum, I've learned something from every risk I've taken.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's something so wise in there that you said about really questioning the imposter syndrome or the fear.
Yeah.
And I find just getting that little bit of distance from it of like, is this really true? Like,
right.
Am I really not the best person, or is that just my fear, whatever, can help make it so much easier.
Yeah. And I think even some of this exploration around like racial healing and such has been helpful to me in that aspect, both like thinking about the challenges inherent in being a woman and an African-American woman on top of that, where there are so many cases of where that imposter syndrome comes up or where self-doubt can come along because of the way society is set up or traditionally has been set up. And then kind of looking to role models from the past that help me kind of remember, past or the present even. And there's plenty of great role models from now. I think my latest and greatest role models like Maxine Waters.
Yeah, I love her.
Representative from your part of the woods, your neck of the woods, who, is just very poised and tells it like it is, but also gets to the heart of what the issue is and just cuts right to that. And
100%.
That's a really inspiring thing that helps me, I think about what would Auntie Max do? And it helps a lot.
It's a new catchphrase. Yeah.
Exactly.
I love her. She's like definition of DGAF. Like she just does not give an F, and I love it so much.
Exactly.
I'm still getting to that level of DGAF.
Exactly. It's such a way to such a thing to aspire to. But at the same time, she cares so much too. Like she's clearly defined what is important to her, and she's not going to back away from that. So I just admire that so much. And then there's so many, particularly female African American warriors from the past that I look to, and I think of. Yeah, I'm going through a time of self-doubt, and I don't know if I can handle the stress or the struggle or whatever. And I think of like Harriet Tubman.
Yeah.
Well, if Harriet could do it, I can do it. And what I'm going through is not as tough as escaping slavery.
Totally.
Yeah,
Underground
things
Railroad.
like that. So.
Yeah, that's so powerful, and that's such a great point, and something that I often forget. I think it's easy to forget of just lineage, right? And we all come from such strong lineages of these powerful women, and you don't have to do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when I think about the fact that it's like in my DNA, I'm like,
well,
gotta do it.
Well then, okay, I guess I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful. So I'm curious, I love this discussion around like taking the risk and whether or not it pays off or not. I think oftentimes it's really easy to get stuck in our egos of like it has to look this one way or else it's a failure, I'm a failure. I'm curious if there's if you can think of an instance where you followed your intuition, took a risk, and it didn't look like how you thought it was going to.
That's a really great question. I tend to think of, I always, like every few months or years or something, I think back to whether I have any regrets. And I honestly feel like I have no regrets.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of weird sometimes to say that, but I can never really think of something that happened, and I wish I hadn't done it because I gained something from it in every case. And a friend said to me a couple months ago, and I think she got this from someone else, and I can't remember who we should attribute it to, but just the idea of, how often we think of, like, what decision we should make based on, like, how that's going to impact the next 5 or 10 or even, like, 1 year or something. And for me, I just feel like I try to and have successfully embraced more and more the idea of just figuring out what the next right thing is to do. And so even if that next right thing in a few months or a few years feels like it's not the right thing anymore, I feel like it was the right thing at the time. And it made sense for that period of life and that set of circumstances and things like that. So and I also have the power to change it, too. I can make a new decision. And so that makes it feel okay, essentially.
Yeah.
And I coach a lot of my clients around that and talk to friends even about this. Like, what's the next right thing that you need to do? Like, don't stress yourself out over making this big decision that will impact your life once you've, had found the person to marry and had the kids and bought the house. Like, when all these other things fall on the line, like what, based on the environment and circumstances that you have right now, is the right next thing for you to do. And it always feels like the right approach to take in a situation that, the other things will fall into line if you realize what the next right thing is.
Totally, 100%. And I find that when you can take that next right step, then all of a sudden you're in a different place and new opportunities come, or you see the perspective a little bit differently that you may not have seen before. And it's just, you just have to take that step first.
Right, exactly. And again, like I said earlier, like, you just wouldn't know what the outcome would look like. There's often things that I wouldn't have expected happen when I just go ahead and try it. And you just never know until you actually do it.
Yeah. So what's been, like, one step you've taken in that regard? Do you have a story?
One step where I didn't know where I'd end up. I mean, I feel like it's the story of my life right now. I mean, people always ask me, I talk to probably one person a week who's like, I see you've started your own business and I admire you and want to know how you did that. And I'm like, I always think, I'm not the role model for that. Like, don't follow anything that I've done.
Same. I feel that way
too. Because I'm not a textbook example sort of thing. And, there's things maybe if I did I don't regret it, but if I had to do it all over again, I may have done it a little bit differently. But I also think the circumstances weren't such for me to do it that way. So, for example, people think of when you're going to start a new business or leave a traditional job to start a new business, to have X amount of money in savings and have a well thought out business plan and things like that. And I had none of that. I kind of just fell into consulting and tried it out, had some great opportunities with some former colleagues to get to try it out a bit, liked it, and realized, like, my time was ending in my previous traditional job. And I'm like, wow, I guess I'm doing this. So let's just keep doing it. And certainly have realized after a year or two doing that there were things about it that I wasn't loving. Again, didn't regret it, but there were things that needed to be tweaked. And so at different times I've needed different things. So I've gone outside of the norm or the norm for me at the time, and found other communities that might support taking on things like coaching or creating with some friends a mastermind group, or even creating some Facebook communities to help support my thinking and here's what I've learned, here's what you might help with, and what do can you share info from me too that might be helpful. And then just tweaking and letting go of things that weren't working in the past. I think some of the letting go of things that I wasn't loving but I had been doing and people expect me to do has been a harder part for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's the next evolution for me, really, is just getting really to a point where I'm closer to 100% of just doing what I enjoy doing and trusting that that's profitable enough and enjoyable enough without having to mix that with things that I don't love as much.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's such an important point of like, and I love that story of your evolution because I find that has been very much my experience in business as well of like, okay, well, I'm going to try this. And then like, no, like maybe this isn't quite the right thing. So I like pivot like 30 degrees. And then it's like, okay, well, like, is this it? It's like closer, but like not quite there. Then it's like, okay, like let's pivot again. And so it's been this constant evolution. And I feel with every turn, it's been less and less of what I think I should be doing, or what I think other people will like, and more of what I am feeling is my authentic expression.
Right, exactly. And I love the fact that you use the word pivot, because I was thinking about that today. It's not like this full change. It's not like you make 180-degree change, but it's just, whatever. When you think of, I think of pivoting in basketball or something.
Yeah.
It's like
you're
you have your
trying to find the guy
in one place, and you can turn around a bit and move a little bit and figure out what feels and fits right. And I kind of think that that's what life is about. Like, that's what you should be doing. That I'll probably be doing that to some level until the day I die. And having the kind of knowledge that that's okay to do, but also feeling empowered to do that is where I think the magic is in lots of ways. It's that's particularly when I work with other people. I feel like that's the piece that I see that they're not either confident or comfortable enough to do and be okay with doing. But once you can get to that point where you just, in the old Nike terms of just do it, you just do it, it's amazing what magic is created.
It really is. It really is. And it's a process, right? Like, letting go of what people think and that kind of stuff it can be so scary at first.
Yeah.
And then it's definitely a muscle in terms of the more you do it, the easier it gets. But it can be debilitating when you're first starting.
No, for sure. Yeah. And it can, for me, as somebody working with folks, or just even talking to friends or colleagues about just trying it or taking risks, it can be frustrating for me at times to feel like, I want to shake people and go, just do it, just try it, why not? But then I remember also some advice I was given when I was first transitioning to solopreneurship too, to kind of to be gentle with myself during this time of transition. And so I also have to remember to be gentle with other people, as it's scary and different triggers come up, or things come up for everyone in a different way.
100%.
So I understand the pain, but I still feel like just do it.
Just do it. That'll be the title of your episode, like just do it.
Right, just do it.
So funny.
If not now, when, right?
Seriously though, I mean, I feel if I hadn't gotten started when I did, I would probably still be in my 9 to 5. It was just one of those things, the stars aligned, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to jump. And, here we are.
And totally, like, you can do that. You can just stay in your comfort zone, but are you really living your full life, and are you happy with it?
100%.
Probably
not. So, speaking of pivots, I really want to discuss with you this idea of being a social justice warrior. It's not even an idea, like it's a, way of being. And so I think it's a really important conversation to be having around like finding your inner, activist and warrior, and how we can each take responsibility for the things that we care about. So I'm curious, from your perspective, like, how does someone get started on that? What advice do you have?
I think my advice, again, fits with what works for me.
Yeah.
And for me, I do a lot of information gathering. So I like to do a lot of, online research or joining the right Facebook group so that the like articles come up in my feed, buying certain books to read about issues and really get informed, essentially. Again, for me, I like to try to understand other people's perspectives. I mean, what typically happens for me when I think about social justice issues is that I think, how could somebody think differently than me in this regard? And I wouldn't say that I 100% ever get to like fully understanding another person's perspective, but having some context for why they would be thinking that way, or why everyone isn't thinking the same way I
As
am,
me.
and
Yeah,
and what their experiences in life may have been that allowed them to get to the thinking that they're at right now. I think somehow all of that is like very, very grounding for me, and I think that's an important piece of getting started. I think there's, I was reading something else today about the idea of trust, and I think that on some level you have to trust that social justice issues will get better. And that's a hard thing to kind of grapple with because, again, for me, too, I sort of want to solve a problem. And I'm a solutions-oriented person, and I'm like, okay, now I just need to get other people to agree with me, and we're all going to
get on board, people.
Yeah, and we're all going to figure this out, and it's going to be better, and we're going to solve it in, this X amount of time. But what I've certainly learned about social justice work is you kind of have to be comfortable with non-closure. You might have a conversation with somebody who has a differing opinion from you, or a group of people who come from a different perspective, and that conversation or that series of conversations may not end in you both being on the same page, or let's say a legislator deciding to think differently about legislation, something like that. But it has done something. Like 100% of the time, it has done something to shift that person's thinking and to shift your thinking too. And again, to kind of build that empathy muscle and understanding others' perspectives. But at the same time, you've got to, I guess, while you're trusting, you also need to do the work.
Yeah.
So, do those things. And I remember a phrase that people used to say several years ago, which is, I think it was an acronym, push, like pray until something happens. And so, like, keep praying.
I love that.
But also, like, get into action too. So, as I was saying earlier, like, if going to marches are your thing, there's certainly plenty of those going around. Somebody said to me the other day that protests are the new brunch.
Yeah.
Some people.
Okay.
But,
sure.
So you're certainly the in thing right now, particularly here in DC.
Yeah.
Where I live. But if protesting, people do need to hear your voice. So protesting can be the right opportunity for you to get your voice heard. Calling your members of Congress or calling representatives or people, within like local politics and so forth that can impact whatever issue you're feeling passionate about. But also then I think I always go back to that idea of proximity, of like getting closer to what the issues are, because there are so many issues that are matters of social justice that, first of all, there are so many that it's hard to tackle all of them as one person, and I think it's helpful to be realistic that, you're not going to tackle every issue, but you might support other colleagues and friends in smaller ways on the issues that they're doing a lot of work or have a lot of passion towards. But then also just being realistic about different ways that you can support the ones that you are passionate about. As I said, like making calls, sending letters, and getting close to the people who are actually affected by things and maybe affected in different ways than you might be. So, for example, I, as a solopreneur, do have Obamacare. So kind of the healthcare debates, Care Act stuff has been important to me personally, but there are a lot of people who, have a traditional job and maybe their employer pays their insurance for them. And so they may have been concerned about the Affordable Care Act, but not so close to it in their personal lives. But finding people like me and you, or finding people who are in much more dire health situations than you and I might be, to understand how that legislation has been helping them, or understanding where there's definitely flaws in it, and the creators of it will say that there are flaws, that there are things that need to be fixed. But getting to a clear understanding of what the real issues are on it, so that you can be informed, but also to move forward with a kind of effective action. I think there's been tons of talk over the last few months too, as we've talked more about social justice and being advocates and such, about self-care. And
that's so funny. That was going to be my next question.
Okay. I just knew it.
So intuitive. But, okay, yeah.
I just think that that's such a part of it. It's not a separate piece, but kind of part of the overall issue. So a couple months ago, I was talking to a friend about even, for example, thinking about the Women's March, the weekend of the inauguration, living in DC and being around, dealing with the onslaught of what is to come.
Yeah.
After inauguration happens, was so kind of, I'm going to say, oppressive. It felt very oppressive to be here from election day on. That it was exhausting, and I've been engaging in conversation and being disappointed in the election results and things like that. And for me, that weekend, instead of marching, I needed to tap out.
Yeah.
I needed to say, I need to not do the march and not be even in the city to see, be part of all the energy.
Hubbub. Totally, yeah.
Right. And so I think you have to know what your limits are, and I think you need to be able to say, I feel like this is the most important self-care lesson, is just knowing when to say, I need to take a break, or I can't do anymore. And step away so that you can, or stepping away might mean this is the weekend that I'm reading books about this, or understanding the history of social justice activism and things like that. But it's not the weekend that I'm making signs and marching.
Totally.
And I think that makes sense. I think that works for me. Now, there might be other people who think differently, and I think what's important is that we respect different ways of thinking. So someone else may think you should be at every protest march and call members of Congress every day and never give up. That's the only way to affect change. And I think we should respect that point of view too.
For sure.
But for me, what I do and what I promote with others is what I just described, of making sure that there is some kind of balance and integration as you embark on all of this, because it's, it is, I always get this expression wrong, but it is a marathon, not a sprint.
Not a sprint. Right? I was thinking that same thing.
Yeah.
It is 100%. And I think it's so easy, especially when it's something obviously that you really care about and that you feel passionately about and you want to see change. It's really easy to kind of go out hard and do all the things at once. Yeah. But I know I'm the same way. In my personal experience, I will burn out. And I will be taken out for a week, and then that's not serving anybody. And so I've had to learn to manage my energy of just okay, I'm gonna kind of string this along, for lack of a better phrase. I'm just gonna be consistent and show up. But that whole gung ho thing can be dangerous.
One of my favorite quotes is what Ella Baker says. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. And she's deceased now and not here to tell me exactly, but I think a lot of people feel like that definitely means working all the time and around the clock on issues of social justice. But I actually think that what she means is we can't it's something that we need to keep thinking about and integrating into our lives at all times, but there's different ways that we're putting energy into it at times. I think there's a lot of importance to be placed in stepping back and reflecting, like, what did I do today?
Yeah.
And what does it mean? And what does it mean for what I do tomorrow? And things like that. So that balance of doing and being,
Yeah.
in a sense. And I think that's how we actually effectively take care of ourselves to get through different issues that are, kind of global social issues that we want to see change and improve.
Totally. It's the long game. It's not
Yeah.
like you're saying, this stuff isn't going to change overnight, and it's really important. The most important thing in my mind is just staying in the game and doing what that takes to stay in the game, not,
Yeah.
you don't get a prize for pushing yourself.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
To a level. I mean, of course, like, we want to be taking actions, but like, I think sometimes in our culture, it's like, okay, I only got like 4 hours of sleep or like whatever.
Right.
And it's like, you don't get a prize for that. It's not.
Exactly. Or it's a short-term prize and not a long-term prize. Like,
yeah.
4 hours of sleep all the time for most people will not make you able to live healthily for long. And we need you in the game
Yeah.
for long, right?
Yeah, I need you in the long game. So, Alicia,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for your time and your wisdom. It's been such an important conversation. So, I'll ask you the last question that I ask everyone who comes on this show. So, this show is called Women Making Magic. And what does making magic mean to you?
Making magic, whenever I talk to you about magic, I think of it as like this connection to my favorite word. I always say my favorite word in the English language is serendipity.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of that connection to the magical coming together of things. And again, sort of like with the trust piece I was talking about before, like, you can do that. I think it's a action and other things too. So getting to that magic is not just like one thing, but it's a combination of things that make sense at the right time and the right place, and with the right circumstances happening. And so I think that is what I see as kind of that magical coming together of things, and what it looks like to most of us in the most of us earthlings is just when something seems lucky or fortuitous or something like that. But what I think is actually the reality is that there's been a lot of preparation and a lot of work put in to get to that moment of magic. And so I think there's lots of moments of magic. There's like capital M magic and lowercase m magic that happens, but there's what's important is that we kind of step back and recognize all the moments of magic, whether it was, today I got on the plane and my plane took off on time and arrived early. That's magic.
That
right?
is magic, yeah.
Right? And I shouldn't take that for granted, just as I shouldn't take for granted other things, larger issues in the world where a battle has been won, or anything like, when I think about it from an education perspective, I think of that one child finishing who, against the odds and so forth, finishes high school and goes to college and graduates and things like that. And, somebody like me, who works across the system, thinks about, well, that's only one child. And we have so many more to think about too, but we have to think of the one child and the whole system, in a sense.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. And I just got chills thinking of that one child. Just like, that's magical.
It's graduation season, yeah.
Oh my God, it is.
Yeah, or coming up on it, I guess.
Springtime. Amazing, Alicia. So if listeners want to find you online, where should they go?
Yeah, so my business is called Ed Plus Consulting. And so, again, I work around education a lot, but I put the plus in education.
Yeah.
So my website is edplusconsulting.com. That's EDPLUS consulting. and can be emailed too at arobinson@edplusconsulting.com. And I'm on Facebook, have a Facebook group called Ed Plus Consulting, Ed with the plus sign in that case. And also another one called Reformed, where we talk a lot about particularly education issues, but other issues of social justice and issues that kind of, again, are disruptive, that where we think outside of the status quo and how we're going to make and affect change in this world. So that's Reformed.
Amazing.
Reform with the ED on the end.
ED. Yeah, capital ED, right? I'll put it in the show notes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, all that will be in the show notes. Alicia, thank you so much. This was such a fun conversation.
Thank you, Natalie. Thanks for the space to be able to chat.
Oh my God, of course. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.